Hi, I'm Jason Hummel, and this is Chapter 4 of my book, The Copper Revolution. Chapter 4, UnveilingThem.com articles. This is by C.A. Boot Hillier. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing his name right, but so many of this guy's articles are offline and only available on the Internet Wayback Machine. I hesitate to link to him, as one of the ways people get discredited is by linking to something said by someone else who says other unrelated outlandish things. But his insights on copper deserve worth looking at, and his research backing up his insights are very complete in some areas. So his article, first we're going to go over, is Poisoning of Mankind, Blood Types, Copper Deficiency, Evolution Theory, and Illuminati. Again, I don't believe in the theory of evolution, but that's okay. He's got some very good ideas we'll see elsewhere. For example, so the first statement in his article is iron is not a nutrient, it is a poison. So since iron is the main component of red blood cells, which keep us alive, I think he overstates his case and destroys his credibility. However, his research on the toxic effects of too much iron and iron overload, which is a symptom of copper deficiency and causes copper deficiency, is very good. As always, one must keep a balanced mind about things, and one needs the minerals to be in balance in the body. So iron and copper both antagonize each other, and they are also complementary and synergistic. Too much iron can block copper absorption, and too much copper can block iron absorption. So I was I lost my place. I was actually high iron and low copper back in 2015, which is typical for older men. Women tend to not get into high iron trouble because they bleed more than men. So the body needs both iron and copper. The body needs copper to help turn iron into red blood cells in the bone marrow. There is such a thing as copper deficiency anemia, where the body will have plenty of iron, uh, but without copper, too few blood cells are made. This was a medical mystery for a long time, and perhaps not everyone has been fully educated on this concept. In fact, Morley Robbins wrote in his book that there's almost no such thing as iron deficiency anemia. It's all copper deficiency anemia. And I don't know enough to know whether that's right, but I think he's probably right. Because I believe that just about everybody is copper deficient. So almost everybody can benefit from copper. Anybody who takes copper gets higher red blood cell counts. So higher red blood cell counts is the solution to anemia. So I tend to agree that really it's all copper deficiency anemia. So this was a medical mystery for a long time, and perhaps not everyone again has been fully educated on this concept. Also, the lack of quite a few B vitamins will also cause anemia even in the presence of plenty of iron. The point is that iron and copper are also synergistic and not always antagonistic. All that being said, the body appears to easily absorb iron from food supplies, and I think iron rarely needs to be supplemented, perhaps maybe only for a few days if needed. Even during heavy bleeding, women can replenish their iron with vitamin C, copper, and B complex vitamins and B12, and iron is not likely needed since it is so abundant in meat and in the food supply in all fortified white breads. For example, vitamin C alone helps the body absorb 300% more iron from meat. And also, vitamin C helps the body absorb iron. But I really kind of wonder how much that is true, because vitamin C at 1,500 milligrams lowers ceruloplasmin, the transport protein that transports both iron and copper. Again, absorbing into the body and transporting within the body are different things. So the research at UnveilingThem.com on the many problems that look like copper deficiency from high iron overload is very complete. And this research is so solid. This is why I linked to him in my book. So high iron assumed to cause copper deficiency leads to cancer, dementia, heart and cardiovascular disease, diabetes, lung disease, gastrointestinal disease, blood disorders, and eye disease, to mention a few of the major problem areas. Each of these has a long list of high iron copper deficiency causes. Links at the following: a web archive unveiling them. Iron causes cancer. Another link: iron causes dementia. Another link: iron causes heart disease. Another link: diabetes, high blood iron levels. Another link: iron causes lung disease. Another link, iron causes gastrointestinal disease. And these are high iron, which causes low copper, causes these things. So iron causes blood disorders. Iron causes eye disease. Each of these is well supported by studies and news articles. I can understand why he would overstate his case and call iron a poison. In excess, without enough copper to help the body block or excrete the extra iron, it certainly looks like iron is nothing but toxic to humans, but again, it overstates the case. Without iron for blood, I believe we die. And in fact, there's only one case of that I know of where a guy took 2,000 milligrams of iron. I highlight this in my book in quite a few areas, but he took 2,000 milligrams of iron every day for 4 months. Sorry, I said iron. I meant copper. A guy took 2,000 milligrams of copper every day for 4 months, and he developed anemia, presumably because he blocked his iron. Again, this guy, at this article, he also believes that blood type is all about copper status, and that without proper copper, everyone should be AB blood type. I rate this claim as interesting and possible. Blood cells, both red and white, in copper deficiency are malformed. He does not appear to back up his claims in this area with enough research. And it could be that there's just not enough research in this area, and it's just a theory. I don't know. I never read this anywhere else. It could be interesting insight to try to verify. So if anybody out there is low copper and you know your blood type, and then you get on the high copper program, check your blood type again after a while and see if it changes. I guess that's the only way to really know. So he has interesting idea on blood pH. He thinks alkaline blood is toxic, and that copper, since it is acidic, is good. But this could be him looking for ways to try to justify that copper is good, as if he's looking through copper rose-colored glasses, so to speak. So some of this guy's ideas seem totally insane. He thinks the United States population statistics are a lie, and that the real U.S. population is only 200 million. I do understand that there are lies out there, and that the government lies, but on this, I don't think so. I've seen the population increase dramatically, change upward in my own lifetime. Traffic has increased, housing has increased, cities increase in size. So I see no evidence that the population figures are a lie. This guy thinks that healthy AB blood type people typically live to be 120 years old, but those are world records. So again, he has crazy ideas. But just because he has crazy ideas, it doesn't invalidate all of his claims that are well backed up. And this often happens with independent thinkers. I've seen it before in other areas of study, whether people are advocating silver and gold or in Bible prophecy. So that's why I still linked him, even though I don't agree with everything he has to say. Also, as comparison, the government lies, but I think they also let the truth slip out by mistake oftentimes too. And obviously, a monstrously large government is going to contradict itself from time to time. Because the government is made up of hundreds and thousands of people, all government researchers in all areas. So, of course, they're going to contradict themselves. And again, even just as for myself, I might make the same mistake. I might contradict myself, so keep an eye out. Read while paying attention. So the next article at unveilingthem.com, Copper, the Malign Mineral, the Many Functions of Copper and Copper Deprivation. This article is by A.S. Gisson, a different author from 1994. He has 71 references in his article. In the case of zinc, and I'm going to quote parts of his article, quote, in the case of zinc, numerous studies have shown that relatively small increases, 50 milligrams in dietary zinc, significantly lowers copper absorption. Quote, as little as 50 milligrams a day has also been shown to antagonize copper status in healthy adults. Quote, numerous cases of zinc-induced copper deficiency have been reported in scientific journals, usually resulting in anemia and blood lipid abnormalities. Again, quote, the use of supplemental vitamin C to lower copper absorption and hasten copper deficiency has been well documented in laboratory animals. So I believe I was copper deficient most of my life. I took vitamin C supplements for a long time, since when I was 5 years old. Getting back to the book, it has been subsequently been shown in several human studies that vitamin C supplements of as little as 1,500 milligrams can adversely affect markers of copper status, including copper-zinc superoxide dismutase and ceruloplasmin activity. Again, we saw the same study quote in the Linus Pauling article in Chapter 1. Quote, in next month's newsletter, we will continue our review of copper and nutrition, including copper deficiencies, role in cardiovascular disease, diabetes, arthritis, osteoporosis, free radical damage, cancer, inflammatory diseases, immune function, blood lipids, and thyroid function. Several times now we have seen copper is good for heart disease. This should be big news, and I have never seen it on the news. Research in numerous animal models, including humans, has shown that copper deficiency can significantly increase the plasma cholesterol concentration. Quote, in one human study that compared heart copper levels in heart attack victims and controls that died of other causes, it was found that the hearts of people that died of myocardial infarction, that's heart attacks, were low in copper. Explaining the paradox and confusion of copper and heart disease, why blood serum copper may be found to be high in heart disease. So pay attention, this means that testing for copper is totally invalid. While the role of adequate copper levels in maintaining cardiovascular health is well established, it is not entirely surprising that copper's importance has been overlooked. One of the laboratory findings often found in cardiovascular disease is increased serum levels of copper. While this may sound confusing, recent research has helped to explain this paradox. It has been suggested, for instance, that an elevated serum copper level is an independent risk factor for heart disease. Many researchers have considered this elevation of serum copper to play a role in the pathogenesis of cardiovascular disease, although other researchers have strongly disagreed with this hypothesis. A recent animal study, however, seems to have explained this relationship between copper levels and cardiovascular disease. This study examined the effects of diet-induced arteriosclerosis on the copper levels and status of numerous tissues. It was found that serum copper levels increased significantly, while aorta and liver copper levels decreased significantly in rats with experimental arteriosclerosis. Instead of assuming that these elevated copper levels contribute to the formation of arteriosclerosis, these researchers examined the effects of increasing the dietary copper levels in these animals. Administration of additional copper resulted in a further increase in serum copper, a significant decrease in serum cholesterol, and an increase and normalization in aorta and liver copper levels. However, instead of increasing the incidence of arteriosclerosis, additional copper significantly decreased the incidence of arteriosclerosis in the aorta and coronary arteries. Quote, further, it has been shown that excess dietary cholesterol causes cardiovascular disease by lowering the absorption of copper, an effect that is preventable by increasing the copper level in the diet. Quote, it seems almost certain that copper plays a large role in the development of this killer heart disease, not because of its excess in the diet, but rather its deficiency. Quote, almost 200 years ago, the German physician Radmacher empirically established that broken bones healed faster when the patient was given copper supplements. Quote, prolonged cortisone treatment, well known for promoting the development and accelerating the progression of osteoporosis, has been shown to increase the body's excretion of copper and lower copper status, providing more evidence of a correlation between copper status and osteoporosis. So again, cortisone lowers copper. Both cortisone and low copper both lower the immune system. Copper, cancer, and carcinogenesis. The role of copper in the development of cancer is somewhat similar to copper's role in cardiovascular disease. This is because the serum level of copper is often elevated in animals and humans with cancer. Like the elevation of serum copper in cardiovascular disease, it seems that the elevation of serum copper that occurs in conjunction with cancer is part of the body's biological response to cancer rather than its cause. Once again, we have to really separate correlation from causation. In fact, there is some experimental evidence that copper complexes can cause established tumor cells to redifferentiate into normal cells, and because of this, it has been suggested that the future use of copper complexes to treat neoplastic, that's cancer, diseases has some exciting possibilities. Quote, because copper is an essential component of several endogenous antioxidant enzymes and free radicals have been proposed to play a role in the process of carcinogenesis, the effects of dietary copper levels on the development of cancer has been investigated. Rats fed low copper diets show a higher incidence of carcinogen-induced colon tumors when compared with rats fed a high copper diet. Another study in rats found similar results, but with the additional finding of a decrease in aortic integrity, possibly leading to eventual aneurysm. These findings are especially interesting for two reasons. To begin with, dietary copper has often been incorrectly suggested to be a cause or promoter of cancer. If this was true, increased dietary copper would enhance rather than inhibit carcinogen-induced gastrointestinal malignancy. Lastly, it has been shown that there is a relationship between aortic aneurysmal disease and malignancy in humans, and this is likely the result of decreased copper status as demonstrated in the animal study mentioned above. Next section, copper, inflammation, and arthritis. As long ago as 1000 BC, foods high in copper and copper bracelets were thought to be beneficial in treating arthritic conditions. In 1945, patients with rheumatoid arthritis were shown to exhibit higher than normal serum copper levels. Indeed, the copper content of serum is known to be elevated above normal values in various inflammatory diseases in man and laboratory animals. Despite this seeming contradiction, copper complexes were successfully used from the 1940s to 1970s in the treatment of numerous conditions characterized by arthritic changes and inflammation. And of course, as Chapter 1 showed, copper is anti-inflammatory. Even the time-tested copper bracelet was eventually shown to be an effective anti-inflammatory due to the absorption of copper through the skin. However, the development of anti-inflammatory steroids and aspirin-like non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs quickly replaced copper compounds in the treatment of these conditions. Numerous researchers have examined the paradoxical role of copper in the process of inflammation, and they have determined that the increase in serum copper is a physiological response to inflammation rather than a promoter of it. In fact, the main copper-containing enzyme, ceruloplasmin, is significantly elevated in inflammatory conditions and has anti-inflammatory activity. Additionally, it has been shown that copper deficiency increases the severity of experimentally induced inflammation, and that dietary copper must be increased to maintain adequate copper status of animals in an inflammatory state. In my book, Beyond the Arthritis Fix, Protocols for Strong Joints, I identified multiple ways copper helps arthritis. In fact, my chapter on copper was the largest in my book at 27 pages. And my study of copper from my book led me to further investigate copper and write this next book on copper alone. So again, copper is an anti-inflammatory. Copper helps move calcium out of the soft tissues and into the bones. The other things that do this are magnesium, boron, silica, vitamin K, and niacin, and perhaps including some of the other B vitamins. And there could be more things that all help calcium move into the bones as well. Vitamin D is not one of them. Vitamin D actually does the opposite. So copper builds collagen, which strengthens the bones, muscles, and joints. Copper detoxes fluoride, which weakens bones and joints. Copper detoxes many other things through the copper-containing enzymes. Copper improves blood circulation, promoting general healing. Copper boosts hormones, which promote general healing. Despite the great analysis and study of copper in the article above, the summary is weak. Quote, total copper supplementation should not exceed 5 milligrams daily except under a physician's supervision. That is a very low level of supplementation, and once again, copper is not a prescription medicine. Copper is an over-the-counter mineral, and anybody can take as much as they like. I see this all over, that nobody should take copper at all unless after consulting a doctor. That's not how copper works. Again, copper is not a medicine or prescription poison. Copper is available over the counter at health food stores and online retailers everywhere. As previously noted, aspirin is more dangerous than copper. He also made no mention of fluoride in his article. Well, nobody's perfect. What are my mistakes? Copper, that I repeated myself twice while narrating my book. Copper, Defining the Human Requirement by A.S. Gisson is another one of his articles. This was back in 1996. Apparently 5 weeks of almost 2.6 milligrams of copper daily over 42 days doesn't provide enough excess copper beyond the body's actual requirement to significantly replete copper stores. Sorry, I'm losing my place, changing pages. So this is good. His prior recommendation that people take 1 to 3 milligrams of copper and no more than 5 milligrams is already refuted in his next article, as 2.6 milligrams of copper is not enough to restore copper levels after depletion for 105 days at 0.57 milligrams of copper. This is very interesting. 0.57 milligrams of copper causes deficiency. 81% of the United States population doesn't get 0.6 milligrams of copper. They get less. So 81% of the American population is on a copper deficient diet. And 2.6 milligrams of copper is not enough to heal 81% of the population. That's amazing. So next, it is known that copper helps blood to clot, but not the bad clotting kind. Coagulation factor 8 is reduced with copper. Well, factor 8 increases with copper deficiency, and that's one of the bad clotting factors. It causes internal blood clots. Elevation of factor 8 activity is often seen at hypercoagulation and thrombotic disease, important risk factors for cardiovascular disease. Quote, while taking aspirin to prevent abnormal blood clotting is widely practiced and recommended, adequate copper supplementation seems that even more logical, beneficial, and necessary for overall cardiovascular health. Quote, it is already well documented that most of us get only about 1 milligram of copper daily from our diets, well below the recommendation of up to 3 milligrams daily. In fact, subclinical copper deficiency is believed to be a common cause of illness in this country. The problem, up until now, has been proving the existence of subclinical copper deficiency in otherwise healthy human subjects. My research for this book leads me to believe that widespread copper deficiency exists, as copper deficiency seems to play a role in so many of the top causes of death in America in the last few decades. Copper deficiency also plays a role in nearly every symptom that people go to doctors to try to treat with the top 50 drugs in America, as we will see later in the book. But once again, his conclusion falls short and he fails to mention a level for optimal human requirements. It should go without saying that determining the optimal levels of copper would seem to require giving people more and more copper until all copper deficiency symptoms go away, and to do this for enough time to matter. Mineral deficiency symptoms typically take at least 3 months to begin to resolve, and sometimes a year or longer. Next, Mad Cow. This is at copper.org. So mad cow disease and other brain diseases may be caused by copper deficiency, made worse by manganese contamination from pesticides. Copper supplements are routinely fed to farm animals, in cattle to address copper deficiency in grazing fields that are high in molybdenum, in swine as a growth stimulant, and in poultry to prevent aortic rupture. I note that poultry feed is also extremely high in copper-blocking fluoride at 130 parts per million or 130 milligrams per liter. So naturally, the fluoride would create copper deficiency symptoms that would have to be fixed by more copper. Humans get no beneficial treatment, not from food producers, not from governments, nor from doctors. When it comes to supplements, we are on our own. So, quote, McBride at Cornell University also pointed out the potential role of copper deficiency in BSE, which is mad cow disease. He noted that animal protein is high in sulfur content and that diets containing as little as 0.4% of sulfur can contribute to copper deficiency. He also pointed out that the presumed high iron content of MBM from incorporated blood also has a potential negative effect on copper availability. So, sulfur, iron, and manganese can contribute to copper deficiency. I note that manganese is often very high, like over 10 times the RDA in store-bought green smoothie drinks. Prion proteins contain copper and act as antioxidants. The link between copper and prion proteins was discovered in early 1995 by Dr. Martin P. Hornshaw and his team at the MRC Neurochemical Pathology Unit, Newcastle General Hospital in the UK. In simple English, prions need copper to remain normal and non-infective. Brown's laboratory tested the ability of PRP to bind other cations and found that only manganese and nickel could substitute for copper. He found that the brain tissue of patients with CJD, which is like mad cow, I believe that's Creutzfeldt-Jacobs disease, contain half as much copper and 10 times as much manganese as those with normal brain cells. A vegetarian diet may contain excess levels of manganese, such as from green drinks. There is also an MN-induced or manganese-induced Parkinsonianism. Jackson and his colleagues at the Imperial College School of Medicine and elsewhere examined the location and properties of metal binding sites on the human prion protein. They found that copper-2 ions are strongly bound to human prion protein with nickel +2, zinc +2, and manganese +2 more weakly bound by 6, 7, and 10 orders of magnitude, respectively. Human PRP is capable of binding up to 5 copper ions per molecule. They concluded that a role for prion protein in copper metabolism or transport seems likely, and disturbance of this function may be involved in prion-related neurotoxicity. The consequences of copper deficiency were implied many years ago in a series of experiments in which it was found that the laboratory reagent cuprazone caused spongiform encephalopathy in rats, mice, hamsters, and guinea pigs when added to their feed. Cuprazone is a powerful chelator of copper used to study the effects of copper deficiency in the central nervous system. It is also used as an analytical reagent for the detection of trace amounts of copper in wastewater. So again, copper deficiency induced by cuprazone, which chelates copper, destroys nerves in the brain and causes brain diseases. This is a serious warning to those people who buy into the ever more popular theory that copper is toxic and must be chelated. Such people may well be destroying their ability to think, and when I read their articles, I can see it. That's it for Chapter 4. Thanks for tuning in. Thank you. Bye-bye.